In 1848, James Wilson Marshall, a carpenter, stumbled upon a nugget of gold shimmering in the depths of the American River in Northern California while building a sawmill. A few months later, Sam Brannan, a storekeeper from Sutter's Creek, was found running up and down the streets brandishing a bottle of gold dust. When word of his discovery reached the rest of the world in 1849, people of all ages and nationalities flocked to California to claim the riches. They were known as the 49ers. Even though the miners had come to California with dreams of riches and fortune, they faced a much harsher reality. One of the hardships they faced was loneliness and homesickness. By 1851, there were thousands of men in California who would gladly have gone home if they had the money. Their fantasies of easy-to-find gold was quickly diminished as they toiled tirelessly, searching in vain. Due to the harsh conditions and malnourishment they faced, many of them died of disease in their pursuit for gold. Others died of the rowdy atmosphere in mining camps as a result of the lack of law enforcement available. Many chose to face their problems by drinking at local bars and gambling, which only contributed to the mounting death toll. In the short space of 24 hours, wrote Louise Clapp, we've had murders, fearful accidents, bloody deaths, a mob, whippings, a hanging, an attempt at suicide, and a fatal duel. Despite these hardships, the miners tried their best to overcome them with humor and resilience. They attempted to form a community with their fellow miners to have some kind of normalcy and semblance to their old lives. Americans were not the only ones who were attracted to the thought of easy riches. People from all over the world flooded to California in search of a better life and future. One of the most prominent of these groups were the Chinese. At first, there were only a few Chinese present in California, but once the presence of abundant gold was confirmed, the Chinese population in the United States skyrocketed. By 1852, 1 of every 10 Californians were Chinese. By 1876, there were 151,000 Chinese in the United States, of which 116,000 were in California. At first, the Chinese, like most foreigners, were welcomed and commended for their work ethic. Later, however, as the gold became harder to find, all immigrants were seen by the Americans as gold thieves. Americans believed that the gold rightfully belonged to them. They called on the government to drive out the intrusive foreigners. At their urging, the government passed a tax requiring foreign miners to pay a monthly tax for a license to mine. This caused most foreigners to leave, but the Chinese were determined not to go home empty-handed. When the tax failed to drive them out, the Americans took on a different tactic. The Americans began their rampage against all Chinamen in hopes of driving them out by force. The Chinese were persecuted in many ways. Their long braids were cut off as a mode of humiliation. Their homes were burned to the ground and many were brutally beaten. This treatment caused most Chinese to give up on mining. However, they continued to refuse to go home empty-handed. When they realized the option of mining was closed to them, they turned to other means of earning their share. Many settled in present-day Chinatown in San Francisco to open shops and restaurants. One miner wrote, the best eating houses in San Francisco were those opened by the Chinese. Others turned to the fertile Central Valley of California and began to put their farming skills to work. The Chinese transformed California's inland from a swamp to an agricultural crossroad. What do you think was the role that the Chinese played during the California gold rush?
Well, they themselves were trying to get out here and mine for gold just like everybody else, but they also did a lot of the work behind kind of setting up the towns. A lot of people, unfortunately, that came here by way of San Francisco, they get off the boat and they get snatched up and forced into labor before they knew what hit them. And a lot of the Bay Area cities that we know, like Pleasanton, San Francisco, was built by Chinese labor.
So why do you think the Chinese decided to stay in America?
Well, I think they'd already made the journey. They were here. They had developed neighborhoods where they were familiar with one another, where they had basically all the elements of their home culture, from their food to their clothing, to the kind of entertainment that they enjoyed. So as the towns kind of settled and places like San Francisco started to get built up, they found jobs, they got involved in different areas of the towns, and started families and kind of carried on like everybody else.
And what do you think was the hardest part of being a 49er?
Probably the danger. I mean, there was danger in getting down in the mines and trying to pull the gold out of the ground. That was dangerous. There was danger in the fact that everybody was ready to steal whatever you found. The minute you found gold, there was 10 people right there to steal it from you. There were no laws. All these towns that were that were growing, there was no laws. There was no real police. There was no safety. It was kind of every man for himself. So I would say danger for sure.
And what do you think that the 49ers' biggest contribution to California was?
I think a lot of what they did was kind of explore and settle much of the areas that we know today. I mean, when you look at Los Angeles, San Francisco, and for example, like San Luis Obispo, those were the three major towns connecting the north and the south of California. And it was all the trails that kind of went off from there into the mountains where they would do their mining that became the roads and the cities that we've come to know now. So we have a lot to thank them for as far as kind of just settling the area and exploring the area and making it safe for people to settle in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.